Big Show with Jim Czek and Iain Burns.
I'm Jim Czek here in the central Okanagan, Kelowna. Beautiful day again. Iain's out there in the nation's capital in Ottawa and feeling under the weather. So we're going to do our best to tough this out. I know lots of people are falling ill during this time, like spring flu comes around and it kind of likes to smack you around. So Iain's going to soldier through. Lots to get through, and welcome back to the work week, and welcome to the Really Big Show, the place of truth. And in Canada, there is a war on truth. And the big question is, why is there a war on truth? Why do they not want to share the truth? We don't know. We're looking for answers. Iain may not be the sharpest guy today, but he's still probably a couple of hammers smarter than most of the people on the mainstream media. How's that?
Well, I would say, to pat myself on the back, and I'm sure you felt the same way, smart enough to see that the Sovereign Wealth Fund is not a sovereign wealth fund, while the rest of Canada's media reports Carney announces new sovereign wealth fund. So it's literally, you just call it a sovereign wealth fund, and then people will report it as such, even if it has none of the ingredients of a sovereign wealth fund.
I was watching it as I was working out this morning, and I heard this sovereign wealth fund, and I had to pick my jaw off the floor because sovereign wealth funds usually come from surpluses, where you invest your surplus. And I was just like, what? So we're going to now just like we redid the whole naming of the budget with capital and operational. Now we're taking sovereign wealth fund, which we used to be surpluses. Alberta has a sovereign wealth fund built out of surpluses. Norway has a sovereign wealth fund built out of surpluses. Saudi Arabia has a sovereign wealth fund built out of surpluses. Canada now has a sovereign wealth fund, supposedly built out of debt.
It's literally that's why they exist, isn't it? It's because countries, resource-producing countries, like in the Middle East, and obviously Norway is one of the more famous ones, because they had more money than they knew what to do with. So they had to do something with it. They had to recycle it through the system. That's why they created the Sovereign Wealth Fund. So yeah, I mean, it just goes to show how incurious our beloved media is in this country. That they don't. Mark Carney says something and they just report it. They don't even put speech marks around it. It's just, that's the way it is. Carney said it was that. Therefore, it must be real.
There literally is a war on truth, and you could say incurious media. You could say that to be nice, or you could say subservient media. That might be better, or lapdog media, whatever you want to call it. But yeah, sovereign debt fund. Yeah, somebody got it right there. Sovereign debt fund. And they just took it and ran with it. And Bloomberg this morning, I couldn't believe it on there, that they were actually talking about Carney launches sovereign debt. I guess you could say before he announces it, like maybe they found some surpluses somewhere. But, you know, the Sovereign Wealth Fund, the Canada Strong Fund. We're going to kick it off with a clip here, though, from Mark Carney here because here's the question. He's creating a new strong fund, sovereign wealth fund, whatever you want to call it. And he's creating a new Crown Corporation, which means there'll be another $600K plus salary to some banker guy that's going to get appointed here in the next few days. Then you have to ask yourself, will this sovereign wealth fund, I shouldn't even call it sovereign wealth fund, will this debt fund invest in Brookfield? Because that's a big question, isn't it?
Or will it invest in gravel pits in Nova Scotia that cost $200 million? Like, we can already now, we can already imagine the scandals of the projects that they sponsor here that have liberal connections. There'll be CEOs and investors with liberal connections. There'll be gravel pits, maybe gravel pits in Manitoba. That might be the future. But again, it's more like an investment bank, a state investment bank, isn't it? Which they already have anyway. But this idea, then I hear you say it, they called it the Canada Strong Fund. That's a political, that's a political slogan that the Liberal Party created. Well, I mean, they hardly created it, but they used it to win the election last year. That's the equivalent of if Pierre Poilievre had won and become Prime Minister, creating like an Axe the Tax Fund or something like that. And rightfully so, CBC and everybody else would say, God, this is really politicizing like the Canadian state apparatus. Like, this is just not done. This is quite a sort of uncouth and potentially quite risky thing to do that undermines our institutions. But again, the Liberal Party does it. The Liberal Party, it's fine if the Liberal Party does it. If they use one of their slogans to create a sovereign wealth fund, and that's fine because they know what they're doing.
Can you put up the next image of Spock there? Does that look like Spock to you?
A little bit, yeah.
Let's run this clip
Maybe
here.
he's what's the other one? Was it Romulans? The other ones?
Romulans, yeah.
Yeah, the kind of they're the ones that are like the Vulcans, aren't they? Very closely related. That's what I think Carney would be.
The nasty Vulcans, yeah. Let's play this clip here.
Follow up. You keep referencing the Canadian Pacific Railway as a benchmark here, and that was funded by private investment.
Yep.
But a lack of transparency around that financing led to one of the earliest political scandals in Confederation.
Yep.
So I'd like to know about the transparency on this fund. Who is going to manage it?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I'm glad you raised it because there are lessons in all respects on how, from our past and from the specific example. And I drew out some of the most important ones about partnership with Indigenous peoples, full partnership with workers, and full participation of Canadians alongside. This will be a independent Crown corporation, reports to Parliament, arm's length, as I say, independent, full disclosure, professionally managed, and the investments that are made will be clear. The objective is to.
So when does the next former banker get named to this grifter account to manage the Crown Corporation? Another Crown Corporation. You know, we were in a process of getting rid of Crown corporations because they were boondoggles. We were doing that through time, and I think now this would be the second Crown Corporation because the housing, we've added the housing one as a Crown Corporation, which is failing miserably. They're supposed to double housing, and now we're actually created less housing last year than the previous year.
Major Projects Office, that's another one. And also some new procurement, defense procurement. That's a Crown Corporation.
I'm not sure if they're Crown corporations or not, but maybe. But I mean, this is ridiculous. And again, the question that should have been asked is Brookfield involved, or will there be investments in Brookfield? And will this investment fund, debt fund, buy carbon credits? Like, so many questions. And so few.
But also he says that, like, again, it's like, trust me, bro, kind of thing. He says it will be transparent, objective, and what else he said? Well managed.
Yeah.
Can you point to any other government entities right now in Canada that are well managed, transparent, and objective? How's that gone in the rest of the government? So what makes him think, or what makes him think that we will think that this one is going to be managed well? There won't be any scandals associated with this one, guys. This time we're going to get it. You know, it's so strange, and I am once again going to bring up values, which is still fresh in my mind. Something that Mark Carney repeatedly writes in Values is that for too long, people had a catchphrase in their mind that's the most destructive phrase in the English language, he says, which is, this time it will be different. And Mark Carney, page after page after page, rails against that sentiment. He says people that think like that are dangerous, and you're going to get another financial crash, another sort of COVID pandemic or whatever, because so often people think this time it will be different. Why is this time going to be different? You know, again, it's like he took his book and he's using his book as a guide of what not to do. And it's so consistent now. It's every announcement is a rejection of his much overhyped book.
This next year, you need to file this. We're not going to play the clip because it just goes around in circles. But he's asked where the money comes from. Where does the $25 billion come from? Like, where are we getting this money? It's a simple question. Like, you're creating this fund, debt fund, another $25 billion. Where does it come from? And he says, well, we're good managers, and you know, that we'll just create it out of like savings. Like, and it's just like going on a diet. Like, say you're going on a diet, and then you sit down and you have yourself 2 pieces of lemon meringue pie, and somebody says, "Well, I thought you were going on a diet." "Oh, no, I planned to eat 4 pieces. I only ate 2. So I've cut my calories in half."
I'm a good calorie manager. That's why.
Calorie manager. But you're still gaining weight. Yeah, but I would have gained more weight if I'd ate all 4 pieces. It's just,
Well, he was going on about that again. He was going on about that again, where it was like, we've got an excellent fiscal position compared to other countries in the G7. That's like saying we've got an excellent calorie intake compared to, all of these exceedingly rotund individuals behind it. It's like, okay, I mean, good for you, but you're kind of you're comparing yourself to people who aren't in a good spot. So I'm not impressed.
And then also they said, well, we're in a better, because they're going to, Francois Philippe Champagne is going to do an update on the budget, and it sounds like, like we're not as bad as it would be. Well, wonder why. Wonder what's went up recently that would have caused more revenue. Anybody with anything? Is it good fiscal management, or the Iran crisis drove up the price of oil and drove up the price of gold and silver and all that, all the commodities? Wonder if that's what it is, right? I wonder if that's what it is. You can put up that next slide there. It's just, imagine if we weren't, you put the next one up. Imagine if we weren't choking ourselves off. You know what I mean? Like if we'd let our resources go, if we unleashed the beast, where would we be in Canada? If we just unleash the beast, even them choking it still manages to generate more than they thought. It's just crazy. It is their own ineptitude there that I sometimes you just become breathless and you just like wonder what the heck is going on. We got a clip here down here, just the first minute we're going to play, because CTV asks a question about, this all sounds great, but this doesn't address the everyday affordability that's going on for many Canadians right now.
So this will be the last question.
Sorry.
Hi, Prime Minister. Graham Richardson, CTV. This all feels very macro, and I appreciate that it's important, it's impactful, and but you go out on St. Laurent Boulevard right now and you ask people, hey, sovereign wealth fund's been created. They don't understand that, but they do understand where the grocery prices.
Well, I mean, I'm looking forward to CTV explaining it to them.
But to my point, it feels up here, and for people, groceries, gas, all those real life things, and recent polls have shown that, well, Canadians appreciate where the country's standing is macro now, and give you credit for it. Or your government credit for it. They say it's been failing on affordability issues in the first year. So is there a connection here from this to those affordability issues? Can you make that argument?
Well, I think.
Yeah, he just goes into a word salad, says nothing, right? Just the usual answers, and you can just replay basically any one of his other ones when he does, I think, and then, like the second point, the third point.
But also the very cheeky comment as well, like throws it back to the person asking the question. Or he's like, "I'm looking forward to CTV," and it's just like, shut up, man.
He's basically telling
this
you to do our job. We pay you.
Exactly. This wore thin for us because we've obsessively watched this for 18 months or whatever it is now. Well, a little bit under 18 months. This grew thin for us very early, but I feel like eventually, and I said this right at the beginning, eventually this is going to break through, isn't it? This is going to break through the political ordinary person barrier that exists. And they're going to start to recognize that this is very, very tiresome. And it's just the same thing again and again and again. Refusal to answer questions. Attempt to kind of hyper-articulate and in the process say nothing and do nothing. Eventually this has to percolate through, doesn't it?
Well, right now, most Canadians should be sitting down to a table of feasting, like because of our resources. Like the world is begging for what we have, and they sit there and they listen to him opine there from above and tell you how great it is and how Canada's a superpower and all these things. And meanwhile, it seems like there's a lot of people filling their pockets, except for the people sitting at the table get thrown a bologna sandwich, literally a bologna sandwich to fight over, because it's what's coming out of there is bologna. And here's a poll that actually has started to back that up and saying more Canadians think Canada is on the wrong track. as they sit there and munch on baloney while the elites feast on the taxpayer dollar.
Mhm. But look at that as well. I mean, that's the one that people say he's doing best, Canada's international reputation. Because all they've ever seen him do is go overseas. Of course you would associate him with that, wouldn't you?
Yeah. Trade policy.
But then the two things that matter the most at the bottom, absolute, like, you know, alarm bells going off.
Yeah, reducing the cost of living. That is the thing that is for most people right now. 70% say no. 70%. 67% of housing affordability. They promised a double housing. They promised a double housing, and it's actually gone down in their first year of this Crown Corporation. It's gone down, and that's promising like $4 billion. And Jason Jacks, who's now been evicted from that office, said that that $4 billion would amount to 28,000 homes, not 2.5 million homes. Quite a shortfall there, no? 28,000 versus 2.5. And then it's a wonder why he didn't get to keep that job. But they did replace him with one of Mark Carney's school chums. The war on truth in Canada is real. Like all this stuff is just...
Another unstated truth is Mark Carney's getting very smug there when he's saying that we're good fiscal managers. What's the unstated truth there? It's that his great nemesis, Donald Trump, has started a war in Iran that's sent oil and gas prices through the roof. So Canada, including the federal government, is now getting more money from those increased resource prices. The thing that his party has been strangling in the crib for the last 11 years. I mean, let's not forget where, if there's going to be a brighter than expected fiscal statement, that's where it comes from. It comes from a supply shock caused by the war in Iran and the closure of the Strait of Hormuz.
This is one that you should put on your fridge as well. But the Liberals and the media will ignore this one for the most part, reducing the cost of living, improving housing affordability, delivering on key election promises. And then Pierre Poilievre, man, it's a tale of two different people, eh? The most powerful person in the world here, Pierre Poilievre. Let's listen to him first. We'll just give him a chance here on a zero tax. I like the tanker truck there. I like that. Run those around town.
Zero tax on gas. That's our Conservative campaign for the rest of the summer. Get rid of all the taxes on all gas for the rest of the year so that you can afford the price at the pumps. Abundant, affordable energy is the lifeblood of a strong economy. We're fighting for you, for your pay.
Good. We did a really good clip, and Iain really got into it. And one of the things that he said was, we're mad at the United States for basically putting tariffs and sanctions on us. We do it to our most important industry. We do it to ourselves. We strangle our own industry. We strangle our best industry. The reason that the Liberals are going to report a better than projected deficit is because of resources. The same thing that they continue to strangle. Imagine if they unleash the beast. Canada could be sitting on surplus. We could actually have a real sovereign wealth fund. Instead, we end up with these taxation grifts that fill the pockets of the few. Again, when you scratch away who's going to run this debt fund and if it's going to invest in Brookfield, I mean, the alarm bells have to be going off. Like, I mean, it have to be going off. Like, it's just crazy. But Pierre Poilievre goes on CTV and Mark Carney can espouse whatever he wants, and they just say, as Iain would say, yes, my lord. Listen to this clip here, and I actually felt sorry for her. Let's play the clip here.
Cutting these gas taxes, which will increase demand and therefore inflation. Why should Canadians trust your economic credentials?
Sorry, I don't understand that you're framing there. You say that lowering a tax on gas will increase Inflation?
Increased demand for the gas, which, again, could increase inflation.
Okay, that's an interesting one. I've never heard anyone saying lowering taxes on gas could possibly increase inflation.
You are
That's good.
You got it right. It's that you should feel sorry for her. She's been. The chances are she didn't even write that question. She obviously knows absolutely nothing about economics. Not even Economics 101. Not even like, here's a pamphlet, your guide to economics in 2 pages. She obviously doesn't know anything about elasticity of demand and inflation and she knows nothing about that. And I say that, or maybe she's completely high on some painkiller or something and lost her mind. But there's no way you could ask a question like that if you had even a fragment of knowledge about economics. So the question then is, why did the CTV producers, news directors and all the rest of it, why did they do that to her? Why did they put her in the seat there and give her that question? Why did they allow her to conduct that interview? And, or if you're going to give her that interview, you would say, okay, you can do this interview, but don't even dream of asking anything about economics because you don't know anything about economics. And that would make us look stupid, So yeah, I do. I think the only decent response to that is to feel sorry for her.
I don't know her name, but if you're watching this, if this gets sent to you, just cheap, reliable energy is prosperity. Just, you could underline that, you could circle it, you can print it, you can stick it on the fridge, you could do it everywhere you want. Nations that have cheap, reliable energy are prosperous nations. Just, you just file that one. Taxing the crap out of stuff is how you sink a nation such as Canada into an economic winter. Underline that, put a check mark beside it. Check with the Nobel laureate winning economists and the rest of the grifters out there. That is CTV. The sad thing is that's not the worst CTV does in this interview and in CTV in general. They have become as bad as the CBC, as bad or worse.
Yeah. Cassie Lake got to respond to you because you're too funny. Why is a British person commenting on Canadian domestic issues? I don't know, mate. Why did British people invent Canada? Why are there British people on our money? Why is everything basically in this country named after a British person? Why is a British person the head of state of this country? Do you want me to continue? Do you realize how daft that is? Every time you people come in here and say that.
And also, just for the record, for the fact checkers, Iain is a Canadian citizen. Just like the same ones that person likely would scream if you said something about, the multitude of people in Toronto there.
Of course, yeah. And, a lot of these people seem to be coming from the liberal perspective and don't realize that Mark Carney was a British citizen. For all we know, he probably still is. Maybe he's kept that on the down low. But his wife also, who regularly comments on Canadian politics, she sounds pretty British to me. She dances pretty Britishly as well. So, I don't know. I guess it only applies to people that have the wrong opinions on Canadian politics.
That's your problem, right? The truth shall set you free. There's a famous person said something like that, and that's what we try to do here. Not that we're going to compare ourselves to that, but we'll work hard at it. We'll endeavor to do truth, even though we get slagged on for that. But Carney's Davos speech is getting a little bit of heat now. The people are starting to, the people that say they love that Davos speech, I can bet 95% of them don't even understand a word that he said, because it was basically spoken to elitists. It was a globalist speech. There's nothing in there that is to the common Canadian. It was a globalist speech.
And also, like a lot of things in the globalist world, the internationalist set, it was completely inconsistent. Basically, the central characteristic of that speech is hypocrisy, contradiction, just as you see with these people all the time. From the very top to the very bottom of the internationalist set, contradiction is is the word, isn't it? And that speech was, even by itself, you don't even have to compare it to his actions. Just by itself was internally contradictory. But now, what's interesting is now even the CBC has figured that out. Just took them a few months, but even they've started to like scratch their chins about it. That sort of tells you something.
Cassie, I invite you to subscribe and stick around here and try a couple months of the truth and see if you change your opinion. See if you can come out of that cult-like setting where you're just fed a bunch of nonsense. Just let us know if there's a bot in there that's causing grief, and the Desert Fox will deal with them. Here's a pariah of Canada, apparently, by as outlined by the Liberals, but to many people seen as a hero as he fights for truth. Listen to Jordan Peterson. We haven't played a lot of Jordan Peterson on here, right? I don't know if we've ever put Jordan Peterson on, but he's got something to say.
So it was true that Carney took a leadership role as the UN climate envoy, and it was true that...
That's our new intro, guys.
Come for the technical difficulties. Can you try that again without the intro? Yeah, we're ready. We were ready last time.
So it was true that Carney took a leadership role as the UN climate envoy, and it was true that he organized like 400 of the world's biggest financial institutions to pursue what's essentially a net zero agenda. And that happened, let's say, roughly 5 years ago. Okay, so let's ask ourselves, what's happened in the interim? And the answer is, despite his success in doing so, all the big players have bailed out. BlackRock, Vanguard. All of these big players have decided that pursuing the net zero agenda, DEI and ESG, that's not going to fly. And so even if you believe that Carney had been properly successful in organizing these big financial institutions to hit the net zero targets, you're faced with the problem that they don't think so anymore, and that whole coalition is falling apart. So my interpretation of part of the reason that Carney's motivated to become prime minister is because his international career has collapsed in failure. And so now where is he? Well, you might as well go to Canada. It's kind of a ratty little backwoods country anyways, and you don't really want to bother with niceties like actually having a seat and meeting Canadians and being elected. You can just hop in because you have this stellar resume and you're the Bank of England former governor, and you can tell people what's what. And you can tell Canadians that you're an outsider and that there's going to be some sort of economic revolution. And you can do that while lying about your actual goals, which are net zero, or failing to explain how you made such a cataclysmic mistake. And you're going to do that because you are completely...
That's good. We pointed that out many times, that the day that Donald Trump got elected, net zero died globally. Net zero died. GFANS died. All of that died. And Mark Carney led both of those. Mark Carney was the chair of the Net Zero Alliance, and the Royal Bank at Scotia just bailed. They were the last ones in there, really. It's all dead. And those banking alliances basically were choking off Canada's resource industry. They wouldn't lend money. That's what it was. It was basically the Net Zero Alliance was set up in a way to choke off oil and gas, so that they couldn't fund their projects. That's none of that's a lie. That was what was set up. ESG and all that stuff was set up to choke off oil and gas. And they all bailed as soon as Donald Trump won the election. They all quit. They all bailed. And so Mark Carney's financial instruments, carbon credits, all that stuff basically died on the vine. So the only place he has this left to save is here in Canada, where you can kind of push it through. Brookfield, if you go on their website, you can see it. Largest investor in carbon credits that you can't sell anywhere in the world except for Canada right now. The only thing holding up the MOU in Canada is Daniel Smith not agreeing to carbon credits as the way it's worded right now. That's the difference right now. And Iain pointed out there last week, the oil and gas companies had to kowtow before because they couldn't get anything done, so they had to do it. Now, the political wind has changed, and now they can make different choices. They can go somewhere else where this carbon stuff isn't around, and the banks will finance their projects. So now they don't have the might of their world order, new world order. It's not working. But here's one Liberal cabinet minister still pushing on the global world order. Listen in on Melanie Joly on CBAM.
Fundamentally, this is happening at a time where we are working on putting into place the vision of Prime Minister Carney and his speech in Davos, where what we did was really working on building middle powers together, bringing them together to build an important alliance that is, yes, on security, but also fundamentally on economic ties and aligning our industrial policies. And so this has been of the core of what I'm doing, putting words into action, and it will be a pleasure for me to answer your questions. Maintenant, je vais juste répondre.
CBAM, like that, I love that word, CBAM, carbon border adjustment mechanism. Taxation scheme, call it that. Call it what it is, taxation scheme that fills the pockets of a few corporations, and it is financialized instruments that the Prime Minister set up in the world. He created these financial instruments called carbon credits. He's the creator of these instruments. The company that he holds a lot of stock options in is the benefactor of these carbon credits. And they want to sell them to pension funds. And we're going to show you later how the media twists this and lost their mind on Pierre Poilievre just on some words, yet they don't go after Mark Carney and any of this stuff on this stuff. But this is just interesting too. The world is more divided and dangerous here. And Catherine McKenna said this, if you repeat it, she said this in a bar, remember? If you repeat it, and if you say it louder, and that was your talking point, people will totally believe it. Just put up the next slide. That is the war on truth right there. Catherine McKenna sums it up, the war on truth. The truth doesn't matter.
That is also a policy pursued by this obscure Austrian figure that you may be aware of, who's a painter and wrote an autobiography in the 1920s. He expands on this exact point, and his friend Joseph Goebbels. But isn't that funny? Because David Eby was calling someone a Nazi for using a phrase that the Germans also used, even though that phrase predated that the Nazis also used, even though that phrase predated the Nazis. But this, which is a sort of a way to paraphrase the big lie, I don't know. I guess is that fine? Is Eby going to call her a Nazi? Do you reckon? I await eagerly Eby to pop up and throw the Nazi label around.
How many times this person here has put it out there? How many times that the world is more divided and dangerous? That Mark Carney has said. Look at the amount of times that he said that. If you repeat it, and if you say it louder, the world is more divided and dangerous. You will get the population to do whatever you want it to do, won't you?
It's literally the big lie. Google the big lie. I'd also say, just to look back at Melanie Joly, who seems to be some kind of Benjamin Button figure who's aging backwards. I don't understand her physical appearance. She looks like she's in her 20s, which I guess is a kind of backhanded compliment, but I also don't understand how she's doing that. But this CBAM thing, I would advise people to read about a concept known as elite overproduction. So lots of people talk about it, but I think probably Peter Turchin is one of the better known people that talks about it. But it's just this idea that universities and professional organizations and so on just overproduce. They produce more people than there are things for them to do, productive things for them to actually do. And I would say that this is one of the consequences of elite overproduction, where you have all these people with advanced degrees and advanced expectations. They expect to be senior people with big responsibilities and big salaries and so on, but they don't really have anything to do. So what do you do in that scenario? Well, you just parasitize on productive industries like, I don't know, oil and gas production, energy production, for example. And you just attach yourself to that and sort of make yourself like a priest and a moralist attached to this thing. And you invent this fancy financial taxation mechanism like CBAM. And then you've got a job. You've got a job for life, haven't you then? You've got to administer that. You can take a little bit of cream off the top of that. And then the problem of elite overproduction, at least for you, is at an end. Because now you've got a responsibility. You've got an elite responsibility with an elite salary, even though you're not contributing anything or producing anything.
You're a parasite. This is key. The war on truth. This like we try to find a theme for our show, the Really Big Show, all the time. And today's show is the war on truth. And this is like the cornerstone right here. And this is like one of their pillars. This is a pillar, if you look at it. And helping them with this pillar is none other than the crippled and corrupted media. Because they don't tell the truth. And they go after anybody that even tries to work away at the truth or tries to get the truth out there. And we're going to show you examples of that as well. But this is important. You can put this one on your fridge. You should just watch all of this stuff and put it on your fridge all the time. The world is more divided and dangerous. Repeats that line over and over and over again. And we all know that it's a bunch of, what's that word? The chicken and bull. You can say whatever you want. A rooster and bull. And it's just, and like Trudeau said it too. He said, you know, and it works, right? Do divisive policies and it works. And it works. That's why we do it. Listen to this though. This is, I don't know her name and I don't want to degrade her, but not the sharpest tool in the shed, but listen in.
We are expecting the economic update this week. Now, it is expected to post a lower deficit than what was predicted in the November budget. On top of that, the inflow of foreign direct investment over the last year is the most since 2007. And the IMF is forecasting the Canadian economy this year will be the second fastest growing in the G7. I must ask you, with all respect, why do you keep attacking Mark Carney this week and his economic credentials?
Well, because they're so bad. He's been wrong about every single economic issue of the last 10 years. He was wrong to support carbon taxes, wrong to oppose our oil and gas, which he said half of which should stay in the ground. He was wrong to oppose the Enbridge pipeline to the Pacific. He was wrong to propose money printing, which caused inflation. And in the present, I just have to correct the record on some things. It's fine for the IMF to make projections, but here's the reality. We have the only shrinking economy in the G7 after a year of Mark Carney. We have the worst food price inflation in the G7 after a year of Mark Carney. We have the worst household debt in the G7 after a year of Mark Carney, and we have the worst housing costs in the G7 after a year of Mark Carney. Finally, you say the deficit is lower. With respect, the deficit is twice the size of the one that Justin Trudeau left behind. Trudeau, who was spending outrageously, had a $40 billion deficit. Carney has raised that to well over $70 billion, almost double, all the result of increased spending. No one thought it was going to be possible to be more irresponsible than Trudeau, but we found that Mark Carney has succeeded at doing that. And so you've asked me why I'm criticizing Mr. Carney. It's nothing personal. It's just that his results are so terrible, and the Canadian people are paying the price through higher inflation and higher taxes. With Carney, it's more taxes, more debt, more costs, more of the same. He's just another Liberal.
We didn't put the graphics on. It was just a clip there, but
That was terrible, wasn't it? But Pierre Poilievre, I feel, should have taken the high road a bit more rather than going into that reciting of the slogans and he's just another Liberal.
I mean, she just laid it out there too, because all the stuff that she laid out as pluses was just all disaster though too, right? Just like, again, just like that touting that line, we're the second fastest growing in the G7. Can you remind us who the other, the 6 other, or the 5 other laggards are? Can you remind us? And then the gap between the US and Canada, because we're going to show you that gap. In Canada and the US are very similar, and Canada should be leading the US because we don't have a lot of that baggage, because we are basically a resource economy. We are a resource economy. And if you ask yourself this right now, Canada is basically a resource economy. The United States is a diverse economy. We are basically a resource economy. And it is sunshine for resources right now. So Canada should lead, yet it doesn't. Yet it doesn't. Like, this should be our time in the sun, yet it doesn't.
unlike, obviously, the thing is, like, we're talking about countries like Germany, for God's sake. I suppose that this entire illusion is predicated on the idea, which apparently is true, that most Canadian voters just don't know anything about Germany or France or the United Kingdom or any other members of the G7 or G20 or anything about international affairs or international economics. It's predicated on the idea that people don't realize that Germany is, talk about existential crises. Germany is indeed in one of those. This is one of the darkest periods in the history of post-war Germany. This is like an extraordinary catastrophe for Germany, and they're having to figure out a way to basically oversee a revolution in all areas of their society: cultural, military, political, and most importantly, economic. And we're looking at Germany and we're saying, oh yeah, like, we've got slightly better growth than those losers. It's like, what? Are you paying attention? And what can you do? And I don't blame most people. It's kind of like, I get it. Like, a lot of people find this incredibly dull. But if you don't want to read about it, then I don't know, at least try and be a little bit skeptical when they try and tell you these things. Just have a kind of instinctive skepticism. I even go so far as to say, don't believe them instinctively. That should be your default. And if you want to say, I don't know, cast a ballot based on what you're hearing about these stats, just do a quick Google, go on a chatbot, AI chatbot or something. Interrogate these statements. I mean, and if that doesn't happen, then obviously we're just trapped in a loop, aren't we? And nothing's ever going to change.
And this is it from the head of the Commons Ethics Committee. I'm just going to play the first minute of it, because this is a strong reminder for the journalists at CTV and CBC, Globe and Mail.
Transparency that Parliament is going to be able to provide at this point, Mr. Speaker, especially given the work that committees are charged with. It seems like we've turned into a country that we are the only country in the world, in liberalized democracies around the world, where the opposition party is held to a greater account than the government by the media. And that needs to stop right now, Mr. Speaker, because the power that is given to this Parliament, the power that is given to MPs, the supreme power that it's given, is being taken away by this government through motion number 9.
That's good.
And it's a sad indictment on where...
Like, for national media, you've got us that we're chipping away here. We're chipping away. But we're going to get more from BBC and the United States than we are going to get from the legacy media here that reaches deep into your pocket every day and takes out cash and delivers drivel and basically liberal talking points. It's absolutely atrocious here. And this is BBC saying Canada's Carney enjoying a long political honeymoon. Now comes the test. Even they're realizing that, like, a lot of the stuff that Carney promised isn't coming true. So BBC did a better job. But they did point out a few things in this article. I mean, I'm just going to say, because last week, Time Magazine, in a sponsored content piece, I'm going to say, named Carney as one of the most influential people of the year, top 100. And of course, that was an article written by another globalist, European Central Bank President, Christine Lagarde, called him a rock star. We did that. We covered that a while back. Absolutely crazy, right? And they would tout that as like a big deal, like one central banker, globalist, calling another globalist central banker a rock star.
And George Clooney as well. But she's also a Hollywood actor and a rock star. She is very much like the mirror image of Mark Carney. She's another sort of highly credentialed, very high reputation internationalist, as you say, whose reputation is mixed, to say the least.
Yeah. Lots of this, though. Lots of hotel.
And then she's chucking these plaudits at again, like herself, basically, her clone, her male clone. And and then publishing it in Time magazine. We're supposed to take it seriously. Dear me. I guess some people will. God bless them.
And then this article goes on to say Carney under pressure to negotiate a win with the U.S. The one he promised by July 1st. We're almost coming up onto the next year, right? A year later, a free trade deal with the USMCA, which they backtracked on, and the housing thing, the housing promise. Remember, the big thing is you're going to double housing growth. He was going to double housing, and they've actually gone backwards. In the first year, they actually produced less houses than the year before. So you actually got worse than better. Worse, which is like you'd have to try hard to do that. And yet they still explain that they were just getting started. How will you manage to get $4 billion and you're in a worse position than and you named a new crown corporation? What are these people doing?
But this mentioned that Joni Mitchell's strange ghost-like figure in the background there is a bit weird, and I noticed that. It looks like did Renoir paint that or something? It's like, what the hell?
And then here's American media. This guy's on finance media. Listen to this. We're going to play the first minute of this. Listen to this here.
I have a message for the Canadian people. Don't vote for this guy. Mark Carney is the most elite of elitists out there. This guy is not a man of the people at all. He's the ultimate elitist. And be careful, because he put out a message and he conflated, hey, Trump is the biggest threat we've had, in his lifetime, thinking about all the things that have threatened humankind in his lifetime. So it's hyperbolic, but then he started bragging about the economy, the liberal economy. I have all these charts. I mean, it's just, and they're all heartbreaking if you're a Canadian. The standard of living has imploded. You look at the investments, right, or where the jobs are. Almost all of it public sector, little private sector, and self-employment, none. There's no real business opportunities there. OECD predicts the worst economies for the 2020 to 2030 at the end of all 36 countries, Canada. So, I mean, be careful. You've got to...
Sounds like he's been watching a really big show, because we show you chart after chart after chart after chart. Whereas the CBC listens to liberal talking points, and affordability has never been so good. I guess the people that responded to that survey never listened to that clip of Mark Carney saying affordability has never been so good. How do you say that and put that out there? And why doesn't CBC, who gets access to him, because it would be great if we could get access to Mark Carney. He won't even answer the email, though. You put out affordability has never been so good, and then you show the reality of the situation, and then ask, how do you square that?
The only possible way is, and you've said it yourself many times, it's effectively having an enormous influence on the flow of information. That's the only possible way to keep those two forces away from each other, to make sure that they miss. Otherwise, people would not be very happy, would they? And it has to be the case. And I mean, we certainly get that impression. It was Catherine Swift, wasn't it, when we interviewed her, and she said that she bumped into a Liberal MP somewhere in Toronto or whatever, and started to talk about the economy. And this Liberal MP, and Catherine Swift said to this MP, like, it's very bad. It's very bleak. The economic situation in Canada is very frightening and bleak. And she was saying this MP was just like, what? Everything's great. Like, what do you mean? We're flying high. We've got Carney there piloting the mothership, like basically highlighting that even MPs, some MPs in this country are that ignorant that they're not actually aware of the economic reality in Canada.
David, just stop with the cap locks and stop with the swearing, and just, try to be a nice guy. Or are you just trying to be disruptive? That's the question. This one here from Holly Dona Blacklocks. Look at this here. She put out a tweet here. No comment from Mark Carney, Liberal, who claims he personally helped balance the 1998 federal budget, though he was just a student at Oxford at the time. Those are the things those don't get called out, right? Like, there's a lot of claims.
I didn't even know this. This somehow
this
passed
old,
me
man.
by.
This is an old one,
yeah. He's never shy about claiming responsibility for saving the world. I mean, there's in his book, which I will never stop talking about, he talks about how he was Bank of England governor Bank of England governor, just before COVID kicked off. And yet, on his chapter about COVID, it's all about how in those couple of weeks or whatever, he basically did absolutely everything and made sure that everything was great. Like he fixed the Bank of England in that short period of time. And then obviously his successor came in and actually did the work. But Carney still claims the credit. I mean, I think he's one of those people that we've all met in our lives, haven't we, who seem to be completely shameless about claiming credit for things that they weren't really involved in.
And the next one here, Canada's ambassador to the U.S. apologizes to MPs for English-only invite. I guess they didn't need to fire him because he was a Liberal appointed ambassador as opposed to the Air Canada CEO that needed to go because he wouldn't buy Brookfield fuel, like that carbon credit fuel. What's the, like, why the difference? Why the difference here? Governor General doesn't speak French. This guy sends English-only invite. They get a pass. Air Canada.
There's an enormous difference. This is actually part of our political system. This is actually relevant. Bilingualism, which is official law in Canada, is actually relevant here. It is actually a discussion. It is hundreds, thousands of times more serious, this, than the CEO of a private company not releasing a French video for like what basically amounted to a sort of macabre PR piece. There's no comparison. The Mark Wiseman one is vastly more consequential, and yet that's the one that's been silenced, played down. It's not a big deal. Even the usual characters who comment on these things haven't commented on it. Like, there's no fuss. It's fine. Even though, if you were going to have a fuss about and I would completely agree with anybody that said that would be trivial as well. But if you're going to have a fuss about bilingualism, this is a story to have a fuss about, not the CEO of a private company. But that just goes to show what a lot of bollocks it is anyway. They don't take it seriously. They don't care. They obviously don't care about bilingualism. It's just, there are ulterior motives going on, quite obviously.
And here's another chart. Holly, don't put this up here. It's pretty clear. And the lower the bar is, that's the lower, that's worse, right? So perceptions index, the lower it is, the worse it is, right? Moving in the wrong direction, wouldn't you say? A couple more spaceports.
Again, when did the significant drop begin? Coincidentally, it's our good friend, 2015.
Couple more spaceports, we'll get that thing down to like 68 or something.
I mean, come on. Is there anyone out there still pretending that Canada's like corruption free? It's pretty much, it's every week at least now, isn't it, that something comes out. That
this one,
you must call it corruption. I think people might say, oh no, that's just maladministration, or that's just negligence or incompetence or something like that. You could also say corruption. I think it's okay to say corruption.
This one here, Mark Carney put out this: the world has changed and Canada must respond. Remember that, buy Canada, be Canada, all this Canada. And Jasmine Lane responded, and I've said it a million times. So I joined Jasmine in echoing this, and as you do. Show us leadership is by demonstration. You're demonstrating, and Iain said it a million times here, that Mark Carney is more American than Pierre Poilievre by a factor of whatever you want to say. His assets are in the United States. His family's in the United States. His company that he invests in heavily in the United States.
Yep. And when he said during this announcement this morning about the Sovereign Wealth Fund, he even said, this is for our children and our grandchildren. And I was thinking, cynical as I am, I was thinking to myself, there's a good chance that your grandchildren are going to benefit from this because they'll be in the United States. Let's wait and see. I mean, obviously that hasn't happened yet, but would anybody be surprised? His family has such strong links to the United States. Would it be such a surprise if it turns out that his grandchildren end up being American citizens. If he, obviously this is all speculative, but when you have such strong connections to the United States, your kids go there for university, your wife works for a company based there, you spent many, many years there, your investments are all there, and that, people might think that sounds like a trivial point, but he tried to make that appeal to futurity. He tried to make that appeal to like future generations, and this is Canada, it's always going to be Canada, we're doing this, we're all one people, and we're doing this for our offspring, our collective offspring. It's a little bit ironic that there's a decent chance his will be American, his grandchildren.
You have to look at the actions of the person. Like, the talk is one thing. Well, there's a few things to watch. Look at the actions versus the talk. 2, look who they talk to. Look who their speech is directed at when they speak. When, like, Mark Carney spoke at Davos, who's he directing that speech to? What's the message? What's he trying to speak to? And the level of language that they use. The level of language that they use. That tells you who the person is. And then Pierre Poilievre obviously speaks at a much lower level. He speaks to the common person. And the speech is directed to the people. And he is basically, like, I mean, it's weird. What I found extremely weird about this, the media, he should be a poster boy for the media. Here he is, he's an adopted child. Do you know what I mean? Adopted child. And reconciled with his birth parents. But he's also has a immigrant wife, has a couple of children, has some ties to the LGBT community through his adoptive parents. It's just, he should be the poster boy for all this stuff, and you know what I mean? Like, he's grew up poor, they lost their house, you know what I mean? Like, he is as Canadian as it gets, yet he is painted by the media, this media here, Trump, as a Trumper. Like,
they even refer to it as far right as well, don't they? It's absolutely so deluded,
clownish. It's absolutely clownish, and yet here's another one here, and the media lost their mind on this statement here. Let's watch this clip.
Stop the tax havens like the one that Prime Minister's company uses. I find it interesting. Mark Carney's company, which he still owns, Brookfield, has been called the biggest tax dodger in Canada. And Carney benefits from that, while single mothers, small businesses, and seniors are forced to pay higher taxes at the pump. I think Mark Carney can afford to pay his taxes. Who can't afford to pay are the people that he has been driving costs on, and that's our consumers.
So the media went to town because Pierre Poilievre didn't say it exactly perfectly. Like, Mark Carney doesn't own it as 100%. That's how they kind of, but he does own, for his own wealth, significant portion of Mark Carney's wealth is tied to Brookfield through options. A significant portion of Mark Carney's wealth is tied to Brookfield. What Pierre said, I mean, you could, because it was ambiguous. He said Mark Carney owns Brookfield and runs Brookfield. He owns shares of Brookfield, but to Mark Carney, they're material shares. They're the material portion of Mark Carney's wealth. They're large portions of his wealth. So if he would have said it that way, they wouldn't have had no room there. If he would have said a material portion of Mark Carney's wealth is tied to the success of Brookfield, that's the correct way to say it. He said it a different way, and they literally went after him like, he's a liar, he's a this, he's a that. But Mark Carney says stuff that is completely like misleading, misinformation, disinformation, and it's a solid pass. Solid pass. They're just like, oh yeah,
it doesn't even get reported, mate.
They will actually apologize for it. No, that's not what he meant. No, that's not what he meant.
Or they will quite literally ignore it and leave it to us, the hated YouTubers. They leave it to us to point out that. What was it? What was the most recent one? A few weeks ago, where he said, I think it was the ASEAN thing again, where he said that ASEAN, the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, that they represent whatever it was, 25% of GDP or whatever nonsense he said, which is just completely, obviously, transparently false. And it's at least the second time he said that. They literally don't even report on that. That didn't make it to any press outlet, as far as I'm aware. It was literally just us. I mean, come on. That is obviously a double standard.
It's just crazy. Like Rupa Shirt. Well, I can't remember pronounce her last name, but she went crazy on it. They're just like, you can tell what he meant there. You can tell what he meant. He doesn't own Brookfield. I mean, Pierre Poilievre is not dumb. He doesn't think he owns a massive one of Canada's largest public companies. Does not believe that he owns it. But a material portion of Mark Carney's wealth is tied to Brookfield Asset Management. I mean, it also, if you look wherever Brookfield goes, Mark Carney's sure to follow, or wherever Mark Carney goes, Brookfield's sure to follow. Mary had a little lamb. That's pretty obvious. And
well, he was also, let's not be silly about it. He was the head of that organization. He wasn't just some random employee. The way some people talk about it is, oh, he worked for them. No, he was in charge of that enterprise.
The direction.
He was
guidance.
He was the captain of the ship. It's a little bit different from just working for or just being an employee of.
Guy in the mailroom.
Yes, his entire wealth is wrapped up in Brookfield, almost his entire wealth. And the other thing is, he's had meetings with Brookfield executives. He's still in contact with them, obviously. You know, he was in charge of this company. He'll have been seeing these people, the directors, the executives of that company. He'll have been speaking to them and seeing them almost every minute of every day. They will have been immensely close to him. So obviously he's kept up that relationship. And then on one occasion, he had a meeting with, I think, the CFO of Brookfield, and then said, oh, don't worry, it's not a conflict of interest or anything like that, because we just talked about anti-Semitism. Sure you did. Sure you did.
Sam Cooper with the ethics committee says Carney needs to sell his Brookfield stakes. That should be like a basic. That should be foundational. We just listened to Kevin Warsh in the United States. That's going to get looking for confirmation for the Fed. He has to sell all his assets. Scott Bessent sold all his assets. Mark Carney is the CEO of Canada. It's about perception, any CPAs out there. It's about the perception of conflict of interest. Is there perception of conflict of interest? If you say no, you have to have your head examined, because it's a hell yeah. There's a perception of conflict of interest. There's more than a perception. Like this one here, if you're doing an audit, the alarm bells are screaming. And if you miss this in a file, there's something wrong with you. It's crazy, and it's material to Mark Carney. It is material to Mark Carney. Will it affect his decision? That's how you do conflict of interest. If Brookfield does better, will it materially affect Mark Carney's wealth? If the answer is yes, there's a perception of conflict of interest. If he stands to gain, and if it's material, again, if he buys a hot dog at Costco, that's not material, right? But if the majority of his wealth, millions and millions of dollars, is tied up in Brookfield, and it's tied up in climate agenda, that's material.
And that question has been answered already in a committee hearing in the House of Commons. If Brookfield succeeds and increases, its value,
yeah,
does Mark Carney benefit from that? A senior executive from Brookfield was asked that question in a committee and said yes.
Well, it's obvious.
I mean, as if we needed to be told that, but it's on the record.
It's math. Stock options valued at X, let's say $1. It's not $1. Let's say their stock options are valued at $1 for the sake of a number, and the stock goes up to $2. The spread is the gain. So we were going to lead with this story, but this was going to be our lead story this morning. But Mark Carney's debt fund there topped it off. But another possible assassination attempt here, because of the manifesto and all those other things that came out here. But we're going to play this clip here on Donald Trump's life here or cabinet. Listen.
But I want to ask you about this news that we heard from the White House about Cole Allen, the suspected shooter, and his motive. I'm being told that he had a manifesto saying he wanted to target Trump administration officials. He had a lot of anti-Trump and anti-Christian rhetoric on his social media accounts and left a manifesto in his hotel room that his brother had notified New London police about prior to this incident. I know Secret Service agents have been talking to his family members, his sister, at their residence, and said that this individual apparently attended a No Kings protest in California at some point, and that there was some concern that he might carry something out like this. What is your reaction to being the target of so much violence and hearing these new details just as they're breaking?
Well, I heard about the London situation, and I wish they would have told us about it a little bit, but it is what it is. You know, we had a great group of people there last night. We had both inside in terms of the people, the audience, and also because they were all, you know, they were strong, relatively speaking, compared to what the potential threat was. And the Secret Service and all law enforcement I thought they were outstanding. You know, you can always, they can nitpick and everything else, but they were outstanding. They stopped them cold. And there was no games being played, that I can tell you. And you just look at them, these were strong, solid people who've got to get paid. You know, this is a group that is not being paid. If you think about it, you know, the Democrats are holding up their pay, and I think maybe they'll loosen up a little bit now because I thought great talent was displayed last night. Bravery, but talent. He came in running like he was an NFL running back. Frankly, he was very fast, and they just stopped him cold. And there was no question. He never even came close to getting by the doors or getting through the doors. And if he did, there were so many people in there, too, also security.
That's good. I'm sure you've seen that clip over and over. That guy comes running past, and he did shoot a police officer in the chest, but luckily the officer was wearing a vest.
Yeah, thank God.
Several weapons on him. Then you see when Trump was being escorted out, J.D. Vance was first, and Trump was being escorted out, then Melania fell, and then Trump reached down to grab her, and then so there's a lot being made of that too. So,
well, it's,
we had a few more.
Losing count now, aren't we, of how many plots there have been and how many have got that far. I mean, there was the Canadian woman, wasn't there, who tried to poison him? Remember that one? Like, there's so many that like we don't think about very often because they didn't get that far. But
well, he
it's
retained
kind
his,
of a miracle that he's still alive, isn't it? I think
30 minutes later, he does a press conference, but he retains his sense of humor. But listen to this, he's not the only one. Here's another Republican that we reference every now and then, Ronald Reagan. Listen to this. This is kind of interesting.
Reminded of the many traditions of openness and democracy that have marked the history of this city. America missed me. Reminded of the many traditions of openness and democracy that have marked the history of this city.
That's Ronald Reagan. Remember, he was shot there at one time, and he kept his sense of humor as well.
Yeah, horrible that one, wasn't it? He's very lucky to survive that.
Trump said he did hear the banging, but he thought it was dishes in the whatever in the preparation area here. But here's Steve Doocy. Here's the interesting thing about Trump and access to media. This is absolutely like a complete stark contrast to what happens here in Canada. Complete stark contrast. Listen to this clip here, and then we'll talk about the contrast.
Date last night was Peter Doocy. And so during all that stuff that was going on that you see on the screen right there, Peter was trying to call the president because he was backstage to see what's going on. And the president did not call back until 12:30 last night. And I was at Peter's house, and the president called, and we both talked to him. And Peter said, "So, Mr. President, how do you feel?" And he said, "Peter, I feel like a piñata." Yeah. You know, people have been coming after him. He just wants to do his job.
That's good.
My date last night was Peter.
That's, He literally was taking phone calls. He did interviews after this. He returned the call of Peter Doocy's at 12:30 at night. We can't even get a bloody email after 3 months returned from their people, not from the Prime Minister himself. We can't even get one of their hired lackeys to return an email. That's what we can get in Canada. That's what we can't get. So many people have Trump's phone number. Like, he literally did interviews. He did one with, I think it was 60 Minutes after. He did interviews. He did a press conference 30 minutes after the event. And just think of how the reporters react. And Peter Doocy actually calls him to see what's going on. He calls the president and says, hey, what's going on up front there? You know what I mean? Like, what? Imagine if we had that kind of access, right? We can't get an answer from David Eby here in British Columbia. He won't respond to emails, ask for interviews. How many cabinet ministers have we asked for? Liberal MPs. How many that just, they can't even, Stephen Fuhr, local MP that I know personally, won't respond to an email. Look at the difference. Look at the stark contrast. And these same people call Trump a threat to democracy. Who's the threat to democracy? Who's the real threat? Who is willing to be held accountable and who is not? And all this negative talk, and some of it here comes from Canada too. Like, if you look at the CBC at any given time, they basically are a TDS website. And this is Van Jones and Scott Jennings. And Van Jones, you could say he's guilty of it many times as well. But listen to this here, Scott Jennings. And I think a lot of the American media actually is starting to come around and say, hey, maybe we're part of the problem. Listen to this.
Well, I thought the president did well. I'm starting to worry about something, though, which is that the shooter survived, which means on Monday he's going to court, which means there is a danger that people try to make him some sort of hero. Mm. You watch what happened with Luigi, who shot a CEO to death and somehow became a hero. So they said tonight you saw the worst of America, you saw the best of America. Tonight you definitely saw the best of America. I hope on Monday we don't see the worst again. I just want to say very clearly, this kind of despicable behavior has no place in America. It has no place on the right. It has no place on the left. We don't know if he was there because he wanted to hurt Democrats or Republicans. Both were there. We don't know if he wanted to hurt journalists or politicians. Both were there. This kind of behavior has no place in America. And it is wrong. Violence is not the way to resolve any grievances. And this cheerleader culture for violence, for people who think that the answer to our problems is to go shooting billionaires or going to synagogues or all these different things, has to be called out immediately. The minute it starts, every single person with a platform must denounce it, or we're going to see this again.
I couldn't agree more with you, Van.
That's good. I mean, we have many politicians in Canada that are guilty of this rhetoric, And we're going to show you some receipts of that. They're guilty of this rhetoric here in Canada many times, even painting Poilievre as Trumpist. They use that because they're trying to paint him with, they're trying to slur him. It's obvious, right? They've built this, CBC has built this Trump's name into a slur in Canada. They drive this hate, divided world. They drive this hate. They've done it. And they've succeeded at it. And they should be ashamed of themselves for it. Here's RFK. I think this is there's one more here. We're going to play this here. RFK on making the point that we've made many times of accessibility to power, which doesn't happen in Canada.
Room and do a bit of that roasting?
I think it's important. I think it's, the president has been more open toward the press in this administration than any administration in history. He literally gives a press conference every day. He set every record for transparency that you ever in our history. I think it's part of that. He's not scared of the press. he's not scared to talk about his opinion, even though you guys just criticize him all the time. You should appreciate, the transparency and the accessibility that he's given to the press is unprecedented.
We can only dream of that kind of accessibility and transparency. We cannot get an email responded to. We cannot get an email responded to. Stephen Guilbeault, Stephen Fuhr, Mark Carney, David Eby, Mark Miller. They don't even know how to operate email. Never mind transparency and accountability. And they only go on shows that are super friendly. And Mark Carney, most of his interviews, I think he's done 2 with CBC and Global, and the rest are all powder puff, kind of like foreign media or friendly media that is not even media really, but just kind of like almost like that was one he did with Seamus out there. Like, what is that? Just event type media.
He hasn't. That was like performance, wasn't it? That was like, well, but he hasn't. A way to summarize it briefly would be to say he hasn't yet been subjected to a difficult interview. Not even one. Not even a single one. And that is obviously, if you're the kind of person that cares about things like democracy, that's a very sad truth, isn't it?
And they've learned that in Canada they can get away with it. And like I said, the same thing goes here in British Columbia. David Eby and the rest. I mean, I've got an interview with David Eby. It took forever to get it. I've got a couple with Brenda Bailey. It took forever to get them. We've reached out again, can't get them. We won't even respond anymore. Like it's almost impossible. They think in Canada that the best thing to do is just ignore the media. And we're accredited according to their own silly scheme, which we disagree with. Yet they still won't respond. And this one here is really weird. There's this group. This is another reason these NGOs need to go. And this is here Jim Jordan at committee. Apparently, this NGO that was getting money funded hate groups, which then they used to drive funds. Isn't that crazy? We have some of that in Canada here. Those what was it called? Anti-hate network or something like that? That actually promotes hate. Anyway, listen to this.
Your reaction?
Good to be with you. Well, first of all, the good news is that everyone's safe, and well, the Secret Service agent looks like he's going to recover, and everyone else was safe. I think that's the most important thing. But I was struck by a couple things. One, the poise and the composure of our commander-in-chief, our president. I don't think that should be lost on anyone. How he handled this situation and the 2 previous ones is something very few human beings you would see handle it the way he did. I mean, just true. I mean, under pressure, the way he handles it. Not to mention what President Trump has had to deal with for the last 10 years on all the attacks by the left and the weaponization of government. Very few human beings could go through all that, persevere through all that, and handle things the way he has. So I think that was front and center. And then Todd Blanche was just speaking there. I don't think this should be lost on anyone either. The fact that we have a 3rd assassination attempt on President Trump in that same week, we learn that the Southern Poverty Law Center has been paying and generating hate, the very hate they're supposed to be fighting, and they've been charged by the Justice Department. I don't think that's an accident that we learn about those 2 things this same week. This stuff has got to stop. But this left pushing the language and promoting the hate that we now learn that was going on with the Southern Poverty Law Center, so much so that they've been indicted. I don't think that's lost on anyone either this week.
Yeah, and you've been investigating this.
So this group funded extremist groups so that they could justify their being. And it was just like a circular loop. You create the hate, and then you say we need funding to fight the hate. You like, wow, what a financial model.
Well, I mean, this is not new necessarily. What's new is that this is an official, this is an official legal accusation.
Indictment.
They've been accused of this, and not just the SPLC, but loads of these groups. Like, it's almost like an industry, well, everywhere in the West, but especially in the United States. And people have looked and they've looked at like how much money they paid for allegedly for certain individuals to do certain things or whatever, what happened as a consequence, and then how much funding they attracted in the aftermath because they fundraise on the back of things like the Charlottesville or whatever it was, when that fella drove his car into people, Unite the Right, whatever that was called. Yeah, somebody's talking about it here. Well, there you go. Any name has done it. Good old any name. But that's enormous success, isn't it? If you think about it from a return on investment sort of level. But for a very long time, people have pointed out, just aside from any kind of accusations, people have pointed out that there's a supply and demand mismatch when it comes to fascism and Nazism and all these things. And, like crazy white supremacists going around blowing up black churches and things like that. It's like, it's much more a phenomenon of the imagination than it is of reality. So that supply and demand problem is what has led to this, obviously, because there's such a strong demand for these racists and these crazy people, and there's just not enough of a supply. So one way to fix that is to help supply it, I guess, yourself. Help supply your own demand.
Wab Canoe. Let's just. I'm not even going to set it up because I can't even do it justice. Let's listen to Wab Canoe here. Is this like the timing and just the nonsense from Wab Canoe?
Demand the release of the Epstein files. Donald Trump clearly doesn't like them. He always does something pretty wild anytime the Epstein files come up. So I'm just floating this as an idea to put the Americans on the back foot, the American administration anyways. Let's demand the release of the Epstein files. Something tells me that they won't be talking a lot of tough talk about our country if we put the conversation there.
That's a man who's looked at by some people as a potential future prime minister.
There's the the head of the Office of the Misinformation there to the left, and there's Wab Canoe there instilling. Like he gives David Eby a run for the money for stoking hate. Just a guy that drives hate all the time. Him and Eby, 1 and 2. Even the mainstream media in the United States that don't like Trump have said that he's been exonerated in all those cases. Yet Wab Canoe continues to pick at it because in Canada, they don't get that message, right? In Canada, the Epstein file is still a thing. But he doesn't talk about Mark Carney's in the Epstein files, and there's pictures of him with Maxwell and all that stuff, right? But he just and the smugness too, the hauteur that Wab Canoe is showing there, right? Just the way he's got his, just run your province and run it better.
But isn't it ironic as well? He's talking about how Trump uses distractions to get away from the Epstein files. Wab Canoe uses the Epstein files to get away from other things. So I guess they have a lot of utility, don't they?
And I want to show you how important energy is as we get into a little bit of energy here. And this is a U.S. crude ship makes its way to Japan as it's escorted in. And the Japanese media made a big deal out of it because they're just like, look, there's crude on the way. Let's just watch this little clip here.
このタンカーはアメリカ産の原油およそ91万バレルを積んでいます。先月20
That's good enough. Basically saying American supertanker on the way. American supertanker on the way. Could have been Canadian supertanker on the way, but we don't do that.
But also, tells you how serious it is that's entertainment in Japan. They're obviously panicking.
Energy is everything. Cheap, reliable energy is prosperity. Why can't they get it? Why can't the media get it? Why do the media serve a government and not challenge power? And they go after Polyev. We showed you an example. They've literally this weekend, they were feasting on Polyev's, where he said that Mark Carney owns Brookfield. And they just went, that was the bone that they wanted. That was the bone, not all the stuff that's going on, Kuzma, people standing in record numbers in food bank lineups, not that, but it was Pierre Poilievre making that. I mean, the way that he said it, you could argue that, it could be taken different ways. Ridiculous. But the Financial Times puts out an article that says Canadian red tape is worse than Trump tariffs. They must be watching the Really Big Show as well. Like, really? Are we just getting there? The red tape. And Heather Exner-Perot, who's been on the show, forestry, oil and gas, the auto industry reps tell the Financial Times they are frustrated at the pace of regulatory reform that is central to Carney's efforts to insulate Canada from Trump's trade war. It seems that Canadian policymakers, regulation is the word they love. And it is. It's regulation. Because instead of taking away C-48 and C-69, they just put another one on top of it. As Iain said in this, a really good clip that we've done, is that it's like third world countries where you have to go to the king to get approval. So that's when, instead of removing the red tape so that it's open field for people, the king puts on a thing, well, if you come to the king, I'll let you know if you can bypass C-48 and C-69. Isn't that in itself an indictment of what we have here?
Totally. And there's a bloke, I think he actually did a super chat earlier. I think he's here. There's a bloke that often comments on that, who I believe said he was from West Africa. And the sort of cultural, the way that corruption is embedded in certain cultures. I mean, loads of other people have written about this and spoken about this, like Lee Kuan Yew, very eloquently, the Singaporean leader, master of the universe there. But it's like, in third world countries, or countries that aren't transparent, let's say, if we don't want to use that term, third world countries, often it's a case that, like, basically everything is illegal. It's almost like everything is forbidden, and yet everybody knows what you have to do that thing that's forbidden. And it's, you've got to be in with the right people. You've got to be associated with the right, you've got to get permission from the right people. Then you can break that law or that regulation or whatever, and then it doesn't matter, and people just laugh at you. If you're like, oh, but what about regulation 325 that says you can't do that? And it's like, you naive fool. Like, I squared it with the man. Like, obviously, I'm fine. I'm covered. It's legit. I mean, even if you go to, like, you can go to places like Southeast Asia, Mark Carney's beloved ASEAN, and you can go places like Thailand or whatever, where drugs are very illegal, unless you've squared it with the local cops and the local mayor or whatever, in which case you can sell drugs. It's fine. You can just sell it there on the beach to the foreigners, and it's cool because you've bribed the right people. You're in with the right people, so it's fine. It is, unfortunately, I mean, it's not quite as sort of on the nose and obvious as that, but we are heading towards a very kind of respectable suit-wearing version of that, where it's like, when it comes to natural resources in this country, everything is illegal unless you've had the right conversation with Mark Carney, in which case the magic wand says that it's fine, you can do it because you've squared it. And that might mean chucking $20 billion at a carbon capture boondoggle or something like that Mark Carney may or may not personally profit from. When you look at it like that, and I do hope our friend is watching, because when you look at it like that, it's very hard not to see that Canada's at least starting to become like second world. It's starting to regress. It's gone back down the ladder.
We've talked about it on this show. There's a gap that's getting wider between Canada and the US. We show you chart after chart, and we can show you some again if you'd like. Chart after chart after chart. And right now, the leading indicators in the United States are strong. And one of those is freight, like trucking volumes rising, rail shipments up, chemical shipments at records. Everything seems to be moving in the right direction in the United States. But, like we showed you the chart of John Deere. We showed you the chart of Caterpillar. And the big difference, that if you had to pick the big difference between the United States and Canada right now, and if you had to pick it down to one thing, it would be the energy policy. It would be the energy policy. One has, as in the election promise, drill, baby, drill. And they've ran on it and now operate under drill, baby, drill. They've signed deals with Japan, South Korea, Germany, and selling LNG. They're opening up fields. They're doing resource stuff. They're expanding oil and gas. They're expanding LNG. And the lifeblood of industry is cheap, reliable energy. Now you talk about Canada. What do we have? Restrained pipelines, regulatory barriers, 69, C48, and then if you go to the Lord and maybe cough up some money, taxation scheme money, maybe you get approved, maybe you don't. But it's time too. You have two things in life: time and money. If you're a company, time and money. And if the two things don't align, time is one of the worst things in Canada. That's the biggest thing in Canada. Time. It takes 2 years to get an approval, 20 years to build a mine, 2 years just to get an approval. Mark Carney's 14 months in, nothing going on. Venezuela right now, fast tracking. United States right now, fast tracking. So time is of an advantage to those other countries. And then capital. Capital treated worse here. Higher taxation rates, more regulation that you have to, because if capital is tied up longer, obviously there's better opportunities. If you can return the capital faster, you go where you can get the return faster too. We have the resources. This should be Canada's time to shine. This should be just like, if we let the player on the ice, this should be Connor McDavid's time to shine. You know what I mean? Brand new set of skates, nice stick. You know what I mean? Let him on the ice, put him out there in the situations. But no, took his skates away, took his stick away, bashed one of his knees, broke his arm, and then said, "You sit on the bench." That's what we have. Do you see the difference? Like, it's hard not to see the difference. That's the reality. That's the reality. And here's a piece from the National Post. Listen, this is Iain and I talk about this. We actually had Douglas Carswell on the other day, talked about it. And one of the key points Douglas Carswell said, a hedge fund manager in the UK has a lower standard of living than a guy that owns a landscape company in Jackson, Mississippi. Let that sink into your head for a while. US getting richer, Britain, Europe, Canada falling behind. But it says, this article says, the majority of Brits wrongly believe that the average person in the UK is richer than those in Switzerland, the United States, Singapore, Germany, Australia. Do you know what I mean? Again, the truth shall set you free. They believe it because they listen to it. You tell them that they're doing better. Like in Canada, affordability has never been so good. So then maybe you listen at home and you say, well, it sucks for me, but maybe I'm just a loser. Maybe I should just shut up. I'm just a loser. You're not a loser. Affordability has never been so good. It's horrible in Canada.
And personal debt levels tell another story, don't they, about that kind of thing. But this is funny with Britain. And the British, I mean, they don't have to look across the Atlantic. They can even look across the North Sea and at countries like Denmark, or indeed our good friend of the show, Norway. Or the Netherlands is another one. These countries are so much richer than England, and they have such higher quality of life. But I would also say the British are so deluded. They probably think, and the statistics might even suggest that Britain is about as wealthy as Canada. And as down as we get on Canada, the quality of life in Canada is vastly higher than it is in Britain. I wonder if how many people are actually aware just how poor Britain is. It doesn't feel like a first world country outside of a few nice flashy parts, like daily life for people, the houses that they live in, the incomes they earn, like their spending power doesn't feel like a first world country at all. And a lot of that is because of fudged energy policy.
Douglas Carswell also said that if the UK were to join the United States, it would be the poorest state in the United States. Look at the GDP per capita here. This is the one that you look at here. In Canada, 54,340. We used to be ahead of America. Let's remember that. We used to be ahead of America. We had the richest middle class in the world. Right now, GDP per capita, 54,340. The UK coming in behind us at 53,246. And the United States, and that gap is getting wider, 84,534. Huge gap. Huge, massive gap, and it's going to get worse. or better for them, however you want to look at it. Like, go watch the interview with Douglas Carswell. You must watch that interview. He was an MP in the United Kingdom, and he chose to go to Mississippi. And he seems to love it. He said Mississippi is booming, and Mississippi used to be, you know, what you would have thought of Mississippi back, 10 years ago, that a bunch of people sitting on a porch complaining about the heat and having no money. In Alabama, you know, a bunch of people playing on banjos or on washboards or something. They're kicking ass, taking names. Elon Musk alone has dropped $20 billion into Mississippi. We can't get Elon Musk to help us yet. Maybe, you know, if he's watching the show, please send help. Here's another one, Toronto Sun, how Canada became a business wasteland.
That's not a good headline, is it? You
This
don't
one
want to be
here,
seeing that.
check this out. This is in Calgary. Somebody was giving away free food, 80,000 pounds of potatoes. Look at this, though. Watch this clip. Make you almost want to cry.
He's giving out all kinds of food to whoever needs it, and the demand is significant, with people waiting in line in the snow Saturday morning to get some groceries. He's giving out all kinds of.
Good. That's Canada. People standing in the cold waiting for potatoes. That's not Russia, right? That's not Russia. That's affordability's never been so great. Affordability's never been so great. Why are you standing in line for potatoes? Just asking.
To make vodka. Maybe it is Russia.
The Bank of Canada. Here's another one. The Royal Bank of Canada. There. Well, this guy is on there and saying that, you know, Canada's heading into a recession. I mean, Joseph Barbuda is on tomorrow, I believe. Joseph Barbuda is going to join us from Economic Long Wave. He's talking about economic winter. He's going to join us tomorrow and talk about what he expects the Bank of Canada to do on Wednesday. In the interest of time, because Iain's toughing it out here and he's not feeling well. 2.6 million Canadians depend on trade with the United States. Many jobs, many job losses. And we're going to just kind of go through. We're not going to play that clip. But many people depending on that Kuzma deal. Many people. And I'm going to skip a couple stories here. Francois-Philippe Champagne is going to do an update. I believe it's today. Oh, no, tomorrow. Sorry. He's going to do a Canada Spring Economic Update. Can't wait. I don't even know if I'll sleep. But, you know, like Donald Trump said a lot of things for national security. They're taking a little bit of heat. Professor and guys like us are bringing attention to supply management. So here's the response from the farmers, the egg farmers of lobby. Protecting egg quota is a matter of national security. I would never have guessed. And that's from the farmers lobby. Egg Farmers Canada in a Senate submission said defense of their quota is critical. They're going to defend this one to the detriment of all Canadians. Food security is national security, and having a stable domestic food supply is Canada's national interest. Maybe lower the price of eggs so that it doesn't have to be, you know what I mean? Like the eggs are out of line here in Canada, like compared to other places. Like way too expensive for eggs. But preserving the three pillars of supply management, production planning, import control, and producer pricing is critical to Canada's national interest. That's the submission. Quotas add further resiliency to the domestic food system by creating a framework. You want free trade, then have free trade. This thing has caused grief for trade with the UK, trade with the United States, and this is the hill we're going to sacrifice on? The group counted 1,295 quota-protected egg farmers nationwide. Who pays the price? The consumer does, with higher price of eggs. If they had to compete, wouldn't we be better off? Why are we protecting eggs? Why don't we protect everything? Or do we? Well, the banking oligopoly, the banks, the banking cartel in Canada does way better than the banking cartels in the United States, just like regular banks, not the investment banks. Because they have like a protected playing field.
But eggs, I mean, we absolutely have to produce our own eggs here, don't we? That's obvious to anyone. That's an obvious national security question. But submarines, for example, to be the primary force in your navy, yeah, I mean that's like much less important. A foreign country can and should build your submarines, but foreign countries can't supply your eggs. That would be stupid.
Because we could throw the eggs
Okay.
at them, right, when they come with the submarines.
That's our weapon.
Excellent. 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 It's like comedy.
Just the levels of delusion. I could almost weep. I could weep here.
This is a food professor, and he put this out, just 17 seconds, because it sums it up. Because we're going to protect these dairy cartel to the bitter end. They're the most powerful lobby group in Canada. And here's what he says here, the food professor.
But I mean, essentially, Canadians, between prosperity and pain, they're choosing pain without knowing. But that's what we're going. That's what we're doing. We're all going to suffer.
There you go. Maybe if more Canadians learn the truth, if you can get this out to more people and people learn the truth instead of the narrative that they're being fed, and then we could push back against the government and say, you know, we're done with the lies, because we're being fed nothing but lies and misinformation, disinformation, all under the guise of them telling you that the truth is misinformation, disinformation. You see how that works? It's like that those groups of those NGOs in the States, they actually feed the hate networks so that they can fundraise against them. Wow.
But it's not just about misinformation, truth and lies. That would be one thing. It's also about good and evil, isn't it? And if you speak as the food professor has spoken, as we've spoken many times, and you smash those shibboleths, you mispronounce the magical words, then you become evil. You become a bad person. And that's why it's so easy, I think, for critics of us and also people like Sylvain Charlebois. That's why it's so easy for them to say that we're like in Trump's pocket or something. Or it used to be Russia, now it's America. Because they need something to explain it, because obviously you're a bad person because you have a very different political perspective. You must be a bad person. That's what they've been taught.
Well, this is from Blacklock's cabinet will never, ever negotiate dairy quotas with the United States. That's from Dominic LeBlanc. You will not touch a hair on the head of supply management. This is the same group that dumps anywhere from hundreds of millions to as much as 1 billion liters of milk every year in the drain that could feed hungry Canadians that are standing in record numbers in food bank lineups. Just think, try to square those two circles.
Well, you know, if you did and you tried to live that lie, then you'd end up looking like that, wouldn't you? That's what happens when you swallow that lie.
Look at that, there's the three.
You end up looking like Dom.
We are looking like Dome. There's 3 red ties today. Look at that.
The red tie. But I mean, we don't look like we're about to spontaneously combust as he does, because he's chewing on that lie there and has been for many years.
So this story is from Holly Doan at Blacklocks from 2024. Canada Pension Plan put $604 million into China's electric vehicle sector, and Finance Minister Friedland at the time blamed Chinese industry for killing jobs, telling them Canadian workers were going to protect you. Fast forward to today, different response, right? Now we're gonna literally do that. Like Holly Doan's saying there, like, thanks for retweeted that. It's like it's like the pancake on this side, just flip it. I don't know. Like this one here is like, of all the boondoggles, this one here is we're trying to get somebody in to talk about this one here. This one seems to be this Spaceballs, the sequel, where the Nova Scotia government leases the property for $13,500 a year, and then the company then leases it back to the Canada for $20 million a year, and that's the property right there. Look at all the improvements on there, though. They did put that gravel pad in there, and then that cement pad. So that's, you know, and then there's some sticks there, right?
Yeah, there's 6. That must be worth a lot, I would
And then
say.
there's tape on those sticks, though, right?
And there's tracks. Look, somebody's done like a a loop.
That might be a symbol to like an interstellar galaxy or something.
Yeah.
Truth and Patty Hadju, they don't go together. Turns out she said that she made up the story. Made up the story about organ donations and attempting to justify 2025 cabinet orders, quashing the Air Canada strike. That's according to access to information records. And it marks the second time Hadju misled media over a strike ban. Just tell the story so many times. Sounds like the truth. Hadju last August 16 told reporters the illegal strike by 10,000 Air Canada flight attendants poses a health emergency by threatening deliveries of life-saving medicine and organ tissue. The impact of the work stoppage that began early in the morning is already being felt, she said. It impedes the movement of passengers, critical cargo such as pharmaceuticals. This is not a decision I take lightly. Shipments of critical goods, blah, 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 blah. And then she ended that strike, forced them back to work.
It's never good news with Patty, is it?
Still has her job. Gary, who got caught on that phone call, still has his job.
He's just unfireable, isn't he, after that, I think?
Here's Patty Hadju talking about, listen to the answer here when talking about Fassi raises youth unemployment with her, even though we're still bringing in temporary foreign workers. Listen up.
Ample evidence that the economy and the economic benefits that the Prime Minister keeps touting are mostly benefiting the wealthy in this country. The income inequality gap, for example, was at a record level last year, the statistic that I just presented to you. And then in addition, you have in the first 2 months of this year, if you look at the 109,000 jobs that were shed, and there were some gains in March, some minimal gains, I will say, but in the first 2 months, 109,000 jobs shed, 64,000 of them were among youth. That's not just a pocket.
Look, I'm not implying that this isn't serious. That's why we've taken so many measures to protect workers who are disrupted. In fact, the EI measures that are in place right now are exactly addressing the kinds of job losses that we're seeing, in primarily tariff-affected sectors, but certainly all through supply chains. Workers, as you know, need less weeks to qualify. They also can keep separation benefits or any kind of pay owing to them. There are longer weeks available for long-tenured workers, and we've topped up the labor market.
That's good. So there you go. You can get EI, but still bring in the temporary foreign workers because, like, hey,
it's another face you can trust.
we only got a couple left here, and you're going to be, I'll try to go real quick here. Ian's like dying there. $3.2 billion internet plan falls short. Imagine that, eh? $3.2 million subsidy launched on a promise high-speed security for every home, not close to meeting its target. Imagine that, eh? Auditors blame cost overruns and slow processing of paperwork. The fund was supposed to reach a target of 800,000 households by March 2027. 800,000. And as of July, it reached 33% of that, including 15,000 Indigenous households. Starlink. I'm just going to say that. Starlink. Just going to say it. I'm going to skip a couple stories here. I'm going to skip that one. I'm going to skip that one. And then this piece here, the big problem with Canada's government's AI supercomputer plan. This is, remember, Evan Solomon talked about this, that Canada's building. Canada has the best AI people. He's going to build the biggest supercomputer. And the Hub put out a piece like a smart-sounding dumb idea. Smart-sounding dumb idea. Because the reality is, it's not even close. The idea that the government's going to build and operate a globally competitive AI supercomputer borders on, according to them, absurdity. I mean, you don't have to be a rocket scientist to figure that out. You don't even have to work on that pad there. Those guys actually have created one of the best finance schemes I've ever seen. $13,000. Well, maybe not as good as that NGO down in the US. $13,000 you lease it back for $20 million. Good spread. Good spread. Good spread. We're going to miss all that. We're going to do all the provincial stuff. Renee and Merrifield are going to be back at noon today. We're going to do all the provincial stuff. Got a lot of stuff on provincial, especially they had the the debate there on Friday, I believe, and we're going to talk about that debate for the BC Conservatives. But I do want to get to this before we let Iain go. Here's UK. Listen to CNN do the numbers for Keir Starmer. It's way down there. Go way down there, like the Jolly Green Giant said. Way, way, way down there to the international section there. We'll get here. Keir Starmer dwelling in the basement. Even in the basement, I think he went under the basement. I think he's in the root cellar of the basement. It's coming, just like the rain. And
downright atrocious.
Yep, that's the one. Fire it up.
For Keir Starmer right now. You think things are bad here in the United States? Why don't you just go across the pond over to the UK, because things are just downright atrocious over there for Keir Starmer. Just take a look here. Britain's satisfied with Keir Starmer. Overall, 18%. You can't even drink or smoke anymore when you're 18%. You're below that line. That's not good. How about his own party, the voters who voted him in back in 2024? Less than 50% of Labour Party voters back in 2024 actually are satisfied with the job that Keir Starmer is doing. When less than 50% of your own party voters are satisfied with what is shaken, you know you're in bad shape.
That's good. That's my favorite stats guy ever on CNN. He makes stats fun.
Yeah, he's very excitable, isn't he?
Keir, dwell in the basement. Like at some point, someone's got to pull the pin on that guy, no?
But if you think that's, like I said, if you think 18% is low, wait till the next person takes over. It will be worse. I can guarantee you that.
And then Argentina has renewed calls for negotiations with Britain over the Falklands after a leaked memo from the Pentagon suggested the U.S. could reassess its support for Britain's claim to the territory. Javier there's making some noise about the Falklands. Remember, they went to war over that, right? The Falkland Islands.
Yeah, the fascist Argentine dictatorship invaded Falklands and was defeated, and so was the dictatorship. You know, another country might look to Britain as quite generous for having gotten rid of that awful government that they had there. But I mean, this could be quite a long topic of conversation, but just look at the timeline of the Falkland Islands. There is no indigenous people other than the English, the British. They're the closest thing to an indigenous people. There was no like Amerindian or whatever, like pre-Columbian population on the Falkland Islands. It was only ever really seriously held by the British. The French and Spanish from time to time went there and managed to push the British off, but it was like a colonial, it was part of the imperial wars, and the British ultimately won. And for about 200 years, there's been a population of British people there. How on earth anybody could seriously make a claim that that belongs to Argentina? I don't know. British settlement on the Falkland Islands predates the existence of Argentina. The whole thing is completely nuts to me. I don't know how anybody could dream up an Argentine claim for that. But
we got two quick clips here to show, and just more comedy here. And this is an argument between. Well, you can watch the clip here. It's fun. This is our fun section, and there's a couple of ludicrous things there. But watch this. I almost peed my pants laughing on this one. So yeah. We need some humor to break up all the lies.
And I'm not a baby. And you're wearing a diaper. Well, babies wear a diaper. And you're wearing a diaper. Well, I'm not a baby. Yes, you are. No, I'm not. I meant you're wearing a diaper. I'm not a baby. You're wearing a diaper. I'm not a baby, though. Yes, you're wearing a diaper. Well, I'm not a baby. You're wearing a diaper. I'm not. Well, I'm not even a baby, though. But you're wearing a diaper. You can't say but. That's a bad word. Well, I didn't say real but. Babies would.
It's actually almost like Aristotelian. That they were working towards a syllogism. It's like that. What they were talking about there is all babies wear diapers. You're wearing a diaper, therefore you're a baby. But she rejected that syllogism. She said, actually, no. That was, as funny as that is basically philosophy in the crib, isn't it? Getting ready to become little philosophers.
Also liberal, misinformation, disinformation. And it's speaking of the king, the retired jersey of fool of the day, fool of the century, and fool back on the talking circuit. Somebody's actually paying this guy to talk now. He's getting $100K to dispense these wisdoms. Listen to Justy making bank, telling the world how it can be better, and following the footsteps of him and Katy Perry.
Much damage the patriarchy has done to women over the past generations. It is now astonishingly clear how much damage the patriarchy is doing to young men.
Why is he talking like that? Why is he talking like that? And that's what he thinks the patriarchy sounds like.
The funny part is people are paying him to speak. Again, we paid Harper and Chrétien to come and speak in Kelowna at a leadership event. We paid them both. In 2019, you attended. We got to interview them, got to talk to them. It was a good event. I can't see paying Justin Trudeau to come here unless you can sell produce at the same event.
Well, given the prices lately.
What's that? You can sell produce, and then those things, what they have in England, where you put your hands in, put your head in.
Stocks. Yeah.
Pearl of wisdom from Justin Trudeau. A pearl of wisdom. And Iain, thank you for hanging in there, even though you're sick as a mutt.
I'm zinc maxing, so I'm gonna have some more zinc now.
Zinc maxing. There you go. That's our show. I'll be back. We're going to do I'll be back at noon with Renee Merrifield. We'll do the provincial stuff. We're going to talk about the Conservative leadership here in BC as we wind that into the election, which is going to take place in May 30th here. There'll be a new leader of the BC Conservatives. And Iain and I'll be back. Top up, they say you're a trooper. Top up with that zinc. Chuck it down, shove it down, pound it down there. And yeah. And take care out there. Wash your hands. Another one of those bugs going around. And eat some dirt or something, maybe. Okay. We got little ones. It's always like they drag it home though, eh?
They've been coughing in my face, so yeah, that's where it comes from.
All right. Didn't the government tell you you're supposed to lock them in the room? Isn't that what they said? Lock them in the room and slide food under the door? Wasn't that one of the things? Like, I couldn't believe that. They literally said that. You lock the sick child in the room for, was it 7 or 14 days, and just slide food under the door? Like, who would have thought of that cruel punishment? Imagine my mother would never have done that, no matter what somebody said. But some of the people were actually believing in that. Locking children in a room. Wild. Anyway, take care of yourself, and we'll see you tomorrow morning at 7 a.m. And we'll see some of you back here at noon for Renee Merrifield and I. We'll talk provincials, and maybe we'll talk a little bit about the sovereign debt fund. Cheers, everybody.